Alright, I am back with another video, and today we are doing my final build request from my backlog. Nearly finished, I just have to get through this recording. And we're doing the Priest of Balance. This was a really cool build to Fairycraft. If you don't know, I believe the Priest of Balance is a class from Pathfinder, which is essentially a Cleric type character who mixes radiant damage and necrotic damage. Now, if you wanted to go with this kind of build, I mean, it's very simple to just build a Cleric all the way, because you get radiant and necrotic damage, including at level 11 the extremely powerful Harm spell, which just does a flat 17 necrotic damage. However, I found kind of an interesting combination of classes that I wanted to show off today that I feel like is a very, very fun playstyle, and would overall be very, very on theme for a build of this type. So, let's get into it. Obviously, we're starting Cleric. There's no point in sugarcoating it. You want to be a Cleric if you want to do radiant damage, and also it has necrotic damage packed in at level 1, so you definitely want to pick this up. As for your cantrips, take the standard 3, Sacred Flame, Guidance, and Resistance will get you a long way. And we're going to be a War Domain Cleric. This is going to be extremely important for the build because it's going to give us a few things. It's going to give us a lot of the really powerful Cleric spells that we like to have, such as Spirit Guardians, Spiritual Weapon, all of that built right into the kit, and we don't have to take it as part of our prepared spell list, it's just always there. Also, this build is going to be a bit focused on being able to do both spellcasting and martial fighting, so War Domain is perfect for that because of the subclass feature War Priest. When you make an unarmed or weapon attack, you can spend a War Priest charge to make an additional attack as a bonus action. This is basically getting extra attack at level 1, with the exchange being that you only get it 3 times per short rest. But with this though, you can, oh no, sorry, sorry, long rest, I don't know why I said short rest. You can only do it 3 times per long rest at level 1, but these will go up as we level. So, I'm going to choose our deity to be Lathander here because of, yeah, I said Lathander, don't change on me. And this is where the build gets a little bit weird. Obviously, we want high wisdom, and we want high constitution, but you're kind of stuck in between wanting to get, because we're going to be using a strength-based weapon, so you might find that your strength is super important to build up, but obviously we don't want to dump dexterity either. So we're in a bit of a pickle. I would actually recommend setting your wisdom to 16, your strength to 16, and then probably grabbing 14 constitution and 12 dexterity, because we're going to be wearing medium armor for a little while, so we don't need as much of a boost from dexterity, but you might find that you might want to play with these ability scores as you go through the game. So yeah, I'm kind of going with this stat spread for now. Feel free to change this if you want, if you feel like you want to use maybe a different weapon and want to go pure dexterity, in which case you can build a more standard stat spread, but this is kind of what I'm going with to start. Now, I'm going to be doing this build slightly different than how I do my usual builds. Usually in these build videos, I will say, okay, we're taking this many levels in this class, and this many levels in this class, without showing a necessarily like a build progression where it's like, oh hey, you need to take this build at this level of this class at this level, and then this specific multi-class at this specific point, blah 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 blah. I just say play around with it yourself. But I do think I have a bit more of a specific path I want to go down with this build, so we are going to be multi-classing at level 1. We're going straight into Druid. This, if you know about Druid, a Druid subclass that basically is based around necrotic damage, then this was quite obvious, but I feel like it's going to be an interesting combination with our War Priest. So, we don't need Shillelagh since we're not going to be using a club or a staff, but we are going to be taking Formwork because it's a nice utility spell, and we're going to be taking Poison Spray for an extra bit of damage on our cantrip. As for your spells, take whatever you like. I quite like the utility stuff here, like Speak with Animals, Long Strider, and Enhanced Leap. You can take a healing spell here, but we're going to be getting this from Cleric anyway, so it's not really important. I would take either Good Berry or Create or Destroy Water. I quite like Good Berry because it has a lot of utility in this game. Next up, we're going to be Druid level 2, which means we get to pick our subclass, and we are going to be grabbing the Circle of Spores. This is the necrotic damage class in the game. Like, this is, if you want to do necrotic damage, this is the class you go with, and it pairs nicely with Cleric because of the shared ability scores. So, what we're going to be getting is the most important thing here, is going to be our symbiotic entity. Gain 8 temporary hit points and deal an additional 1 to 6 necrotic damage while you have them. This is on your melee attacks, so this is why we kind of want War Cleric, because that means we are going to be able to you know, extra attack while dealing necrotic damage on top of it. You also can cast Halo with Spores, which is the second feature that deals double damage. Now this costs a reaction, so you get to do an attack, a bonus action attack, and then a reaction attack that deals 1d4 necrotic damage, but with Symbiotic Entity up, you'll be dealing 2d4 of necrotic damage, so it's quite good. We're also going to be getting our cantrip Bone Chill, which is an extra little bit in necrotic damage as well on a cantrip, so you do get another. We now both have a cantrip for radiant damage and a cantrip for necrotic damage, which is quite good. We do also get Wild Shape at this point, in which case you can get some interesting ones like the Cat, which would let you crawl into small spaces as a utility thing for getting around, but it's not really a main focus of this build, so I won't be talking about it much here. As for your spells, take whatever you like. Fairy Fire. Now that we have our main Druid feature, we're actually going to jump back over to Cleric here, and this is where my video is going to fall back into the standard formula of we're taking this many levels in this class, and then taking this many levels in this class. But I feel like you want to get those early levels of Druid quite quick, since we're not chasing up for extra attack, because we're not going to be playing a class that gets it at level 5, we can be a bit more lenient with our multi-classing kind of choices at each level. So you want to go with Cleric at the first level, 2 levels of Druid, and then back to Cleric most likely after that. Speaking of which, we get Turn Undead at this level, which means that undead that are around us will run away. And also we get our Channel Divinity here, which is Guided Strike. This is going to give us a +10 bonus to our attack roll. This is basically Shield, but for like attacking. You can do it on a reaction, spending your Channel Divinity to add 10 to your roll, meaning that you can basically guarantee that your next attack is going to hit. Really, really powerful. We can also have a look at our spells at this level. Obviously, we want Guiding Bolt and Inflict Wounds for that radiant and necrotic damage. The rest can be whatever you want. I quite like having the 2 healing spell options and Sanctuary. I just like Sanctuary as a spell. I think it is really powerful and can be used for a lot of interesting strategies. Next up at Cleric level 3, we're going to be getting our, we're going to be getting some more spells. We're going to be getting level 2 spells at this point, and we're also going to be getting Spiritual Weapon for free, which is one of my favourite spells in this game. So you can take whatever level 2 spell you like here, but I'm obviously going to go with Aid, as I do believe it is one of the most powerful spells in this game, allowing for a lot of tankiness by adding an increase to your max HP, as well as being able to stagger that with the temporary HP that we get from our Symbiotic Entity feature. So this is going to allow us to be up close and personal. Next up at Cleric level 4, we are going to be getting that oh so important feat, and it's definitely going to go to an ability score improvement, but to where? Wisdom would obviously be really important for our spell casting. It's definitely a popular choice, but since we're also a martial fighter and we're going to be using a strength weapon, you might want to be putting that into strength. However, I'm going to specifically suggest going for Wisdom here, putting this up to a +2, and by this point you've definitely reached Act 2 in your game, so you're probably going to want to get your hands on the Potion of Everlasting Strength to bump your strength up to 18. So I feel like take your Wisdom increase here, and then use the Everlasting Potion not long after to get your 18 in strength, which is about as high as this build needs it to go. I feel like that is pretty powerful overall. We're also going to get a cantrip at this level. Take whatever you like. Thaumaturgy is pretty good here since we don't have friends, so you can still make intimidation checks with advantage, which is one of the 3 pillars of conversation, so definitely want that there. Nothing interesting to say about the prepared spells, just take whatever you think is best. And our final level of Cleric is going to be Cleric 5. This is going to give us a few cool things. We're going to get Destroy Undead, which means when we successfully turn them, they take an extra bit of radiant damage, which is really good. But we're also getting Spirit Guardians at this level, which is the most on-theme spell for this build. It is one of the most powerful spells in the game. If you've played with Shadowheart in your party, you know this. But it basically creates an aura of Spirit Guardians around you, and when an enemy steps into that, they have to make a Wisdom saving throw or take radiant or necrotic damage based on what you chose when you cast a spell, and their movement speed is halved. This is super powerful, and if you know how to kind of use it in a cheesy way, you can definitely make this a really potent spell, and it's so on theme for this build that this is absolutely what we wanted to grab, and the fact that we get it for free and we don't have to put it as part of our prepared spells with this subclass is just icing on the cake. Everything synergizes really, really well. Since we're a martial fighter and we like to get close, there's no reason to basically not just cast Spirit Guardians, go in and do your melee damage immediately after with your War Priest charges. Go absolutely crazy on close range combat with this build. As for prepared spells, we have access to level 3 spells at this point, so you can kind of take whatever you like here. I quite like Mass Healing Word and Revivify, just because I feel like these kind of complete our healing kind of build. We now have a ranged team-wide heal, and the ability to revive fallen allies without the need of items. Although if you feel like you're getting a lot of Revivify scrolls, you don't really need this, feel free to take something else, but I quite like these options. Now, as I said, we are done with Cleric now, so we're going to be moving back over to Druid for the rest of our levels. At this point, we're going to be getting level 2 spells. There's nothing extremely important here, so take whatever you like. I personally quite like to grab, we can grab our hands on Moonbeam and something like Heat Metal or Spike Growth. Just grab some things that are unique, a bit more unique to Druid, and have some fun with it, since you might not get to use these spells that often if you're not really a Druid guy or gal. Or something in between. We don't really discriminate here. Right, next up at Druid level 4, we're going to be getting our second feat. And again, you can kind of do whatever you want with this. It's a little bit more loose. There's not really anything I would specifically recommend feat-wise. You can pretty much grab whatever you want here, but I am going to be grabbing an ability score improvement. And again, I feel like with our strength being at 18 at this point with the Potion of Everlasting Strength, your options are kind of up to you. If you wanted to wear something, if you wanted to get a bit more AC, you can bump your dexterity. If you wanted a bit more health, since we are a melee fighter, having only 66 HP kind of sucks, so it might be worth bumping that up to get it way higher. Or you could cap out your wisdom for the highest possible spell casting. It's kind of up to you. I think I'm going to go with the bump to Constitution here, just because I want that bit of HP since we're a close-up fighter. And I do feel like, even though in most like D&D build videos or Baldur's Gate build videos, they'll say, oh, you want to max out your primary stat right away. I feel like with Baldur's Gate 3's level cap being 12, it doesn't matter as much if you don't get the highest caps. Yes, you're technically not going to be as damage efficient as you could be, but I feel like having survivability is good because you're only doing damage if you're alive. So I think bumping on Constitution here makes much more sense. I mean, you could grab the tough feat here, but I actually don't think it changes the amount of HP you get at all. A bump to your Constitution is the same as getting by 2 points. It's the same as getting the tough feat. And with that, you also get to bump your Constitution saving throws. So honestly, I'm not sure what purpose the tough feat has in this game, I must admit. Perhaps on lower difficulties it does more things, I don't know. Perhaps the calcs are different. We also get another thingy at this... a cantrip, I should say. I should probably use the actual name. At this point, take whatever you like, it really doesn't matter. Produce Flame or Shillelagh. I mean, again, like I say, our primary weapon for this build isn't going to be a club or a staff, so probably just taking Produce Flame so you have a fire damage option would probably be best. We're at Druid level 5 now, which means we do get a little bump to our Wild Shape, I believe. We are going to get Wild Stripe, so you can make an extra attack with your Wild Shape. Again, it's not a primary feature of this build, so I'm not too worried about it, but it is nice to have there. Always having the option to Wild Shape is better than not having it. We're also going to get some unique spells from our subclass here. We're going to be getting Animate Dead and Gaseous Form. I feel like these are quite on point, being a Necromancer type deal, in addition to being able to do necrotic damage is quite good, and Gaseous Form just has a lot of niche uses. I think this also works for the Travelling Through Small Spaces thing, but I'm not entirely sure, but I wouldn't be spending a level 3 spell slot on that, just use a Wild Shape charge. As for our spells, we have access to level 3 spells at this point. I quite like Cool Lightning and Sleet Storm here. These are both really powerful utility spells and lets you feel like you're really controlling the elements as a Nature Druid should. Nature Druid? It's like saying the same thing twice. Why did I say it like that? I don't know. At Druid level 6, we're going to be getting Fungal Infestation. You raise a mildewed, mold-encrusted zombie from a corpse. Basically, you get to summon the dead without needing to use Animate Dead. It just comes as a class feature, and it costs a Fungal Infestation charge, which I now think we have a couple of. You also get some extra wild shape forms at this level, being the Panther and the Owlbear, and the Owlbear and Panther are nothing to sneeze at. These are really solid options. Again, not the focus of the build, but nice to have in situations where they are useful. We're also finally getting level 6 spell slots at this level because we've mixed 2 full casters, so we actually get to cast max level spells with this build, which is always fun. Yeah, take whatever you like here. Plant Growth can be a useful spell, like I say, maybe even Flaming Spear. Just take whatever you like. It's your life. And lastly, at Ranger level 12, we are going to be getting our final spell of the build, and because we are a Spores Druid, we are going to be getting Blight. Aside from Harm, this is the most powerful necrotic spell in the game. Yes, it sucks that we are getting this at total level 12, basically the end of the game, but it feels powerful enough to be an endgame spell. However, if you wanted to focus more on the necrotic elements of this build before the divine aspects, you could go for the levels of Druid earlier and get this sooner, but then I feel like missing out on things like Spirit Guardians and healing is going to hurt your build overall, so I definitely think going Druid last is the better way to go. If you don't care about getting Blight, then you don't need to take 7 levels of Druid, play around with the levels on each class and see what you like. But for now, I feel like I just wanted to kind of get the big necrotic spell because it feels like it's on theme for this build. We're also going to be getting Confusion, which is a nice little extra bit of kit, and we also have access to other level 4 spells at this point. I would personally recommend something along the lines of maybe Conjure Woodland Being to get some more offensive and defensive support by being able to summon a Woodland Being, which summons a Dryad, and then that Dryad can summon a Wood Woat, so that is 2 extra fighters for your party, a very, very powerful spell with no concentration that you need to use. You could also get something like Freedom of Movement, Polymorph, Wall of Fire, or Ice Storm. I quite like Ice Storm. I feel like it is quite a powerful spell. If you used Jaheira in your party during Act 2, then you know this is quite a powerful option to have in your kit. And with that, we have the build is complete. We have all of our levels done, and holy crap, that's a lot of spells. I can't actually fit them all into my hotbar at the moment. That is that's interesting. Okay, but you can kind of see that the one that's off screen is Confusion. But yeah, this is all the stuff you get with this build. It's a lot. You're going to need to organize your hotbar a bit, but let's have a look at all this extra stuff at the top, because if you haven't noticed, we've got quite a few things here. First off, we've got 4 War Priest charges. That is 4 extra attacks per long rest. Quite good. We have 2 Wild Shape charges, which means you can use 2 uses of Wild Shape. We have only 1 Channel Divinity charge, which does suck a bit, but it can come in clutch. 4 Fungal Infestation charges, meaning you can raise 4 zombies per long rest. 5 level 1 spell slots, and then a bunch of others of the rest. I've never actually seen like spell slots condensed like that. That's weird, or perhaps I've just never noticed it. But yeah, that is the build for the most part, so let's get into the equipment, because it is quite fun on this build. There's lots of fun equipment here. So, starting off, we have the Circlet of Hunting. Since we're going to be using Guiding Bolt a lot for radiant damage, this is just going to give us an extra 1d4 bonus to your attack rolls, basically guaranteeing that once you've used Guiding Bolt, you're going to be hitting your opponent. Basically combining this with advantage just always guarantees a hit, so even if you don't have that use of Guided Strike, you're still going to be an effective fighter, but this is interchangeable, so, you know, play around with this slot. Cloak of Protection, standard on all my builds if I don't know what to get, just a buff to your armor class and saving throws is always good. Here we have the Luminous Armor. When the wearer deals radiant damage, they cause a radiant shockwave. Hold on. That doesn't seem right. Inflict... Oh, yes, it is. Sorry. That's what I thought it was supposed to say, Radiating Orb. I was like, why does it sound different than I remember? Basically, what Radiating Orb does, it inflicts Radiating Orb in a free media radius around you, and what this does is the affected enemy has -1 to attack rolls per remaining turn. It also sheds a bright light in an area surrounding it. Basically, stacking this on with Guiding Bolt and other sources of radiant damage that we have, you're going to be inflicting a lot of debuffs on your enemy, and these debuffs of keeping a bright light on an enemy is going to stack with some other aspects of our build. So we have the Luminous Armor here, but if you want to change up your armor set once you get into Act 3, you can get your hands on the Armor of the Spore Keeper. This is an armor specifically designed to synergize with the Symbiotic Entity feature. The wearer gains a +1 bonus to spell save DC when dealing necrotic damage. They deal an additional 1 necrotic damage as well when they deal necrotic damage. Sorry, I read that a bit wrong, but you can see it on screen. When imbued with Symbiotic Entity, you can spread Bitterbang Spores, Tirmask Spores, and Haste Spores. Bitterbang Spores eject poisonous Bitterbang Spores and create a cloud of noxious fumes that deal poison damage. Tirmask Spores deal poison damage and can befuddle, and befuddling, gotta do a lot of explaining here. Basically, they can't control their actions, they basically get the Confusion status effect. And lastly, Haste Spores. You can grant haste for 1 turn on a creature of your choice. This can be quite powerful, but I don't necessarily think it's recommended. I just wanted to mention it here because it's quite on theme with the build. However, with our build set up the way it is, you're not going to be getting that much HC out of it because it's like armor, which is why I said you could potentially play around with that, with the ability scores with this build. But I'm going to stick with the Luminous Armor for now, and you could change it to another decent piece of medium or heavy armor later on in the game. Next up, the Dark Justiciar Gauntlets, specifically the uncommon version, because these can just be found lying around in Act 2 and are really easy to get. It just makes your weapon attacks deal an additional 1d4 necrotic damage, so it triggers a lot of our ability features basically for free, without even needing to use Symbiotic Entity, although I would personally always have that up if you can. Last up, this is kind of something I just wanted to showcase but isn't really necessary to the build. These are the Boots of Apparent Death. They're going to give you the ability to cast Feign Death once per short rest, and if you don't know, Feign Death puts an ally in a protective coma. That can be yourself. They become resistant to all damage except psychic, and disease and poison have no effect. I felt like being a necrotic damage necromancer type user basically gives you some level of control over death, so being able to inflict like a half death on yourself at a moment's notice, even though it may not have a lot of use cases, is still quite fun and thematic. Next up, the Spectator's Eyes. I've shown this off in a couple of videos now, but I really wanted to use it here. Mainly because this is going to give us Wounding Ray, which is a decent chunk of necrotic damage that we can pretty much always cast once per long rest, and we also get Ray of Fear, which frightens our targets as just an extra little bonus, but I mainly want it just for the on-theme necrotic damage. Why would I click away? There we go. We also can get the Callous Glow Ring. The wearer deals an additional 2 points of damage against creatures that are illuminated. Because of our Radiating Orb and our choice of weapon, this can go off pretty much 100% of the time. It's not necessary for the build, but I just kind of wanted to include it here to show that, hey, it exists. But you can always go with something like the Whispering Promise or something else, or maybe even the Ring of Protection if you want something a bit more standard. Next up, the Ring of Exalted Marrow. You get this kind of towards the tail end of Act 2, but this has got a couple of features that are on theme for us, being a Necromancer. Extort the Risen. Subjugate the Undead with your commands. Basically, I think this kind of lets you basically use Turn Undead, but in a different way. I'm not exactly sure what the exact mechanics of this is, but I've used it a couple of times in a casual playthrough, and it was very effective against Undead. And Ghoulish Touch, an extra bit of necrotic damage you can do once per long rest, basically just more ways to do necrotic damage. Because even though with this build we have a lot of ways of dealing radiant damage, we have less so of dealing necrotic damage, so I kind of wanted to get this here. Next up is our shield. I'm going to go over the shield first. Basically, this is the Shield of Devotion. You can just get this from a vendor as soon as you start Act 2, pretty much, and it's pretty easy to get. You gain an additional level 1 spell slot, which is why we have 5. When a foe hits you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to knock them prone, unless they succeed a dex save. This is standard on a lot of mid to late game shields, and it's just a good ability to have if you're not using that reaction for your Halo of Spores. And you also get a free cast of Aid as a level 3 spell if you didn't feel like using it, if you just wanted to quickly give yourself a buff and save that spell slot for later. Basically, this is just a good shield that you can get easily, but if you find a better shield, use that. Vicona's Walking Fortress from Act 3 definitely stands out. And the big, the bad, the Blood of Lathander. Basically, this is a legendary level weapon that you can get as soon as you start the game, but would probably recommend getting it closer to the start of Act 2 if you want to keep with quest progression. And you don't have to fight a single enemy to get it. It's quite powerful. It's got a +3 weapon enchantment. Once per long rest when your hit points are reduced to 0, you instantly regain 2 to 12 hit points, and allies within 9 meters also regain 1 to 6. Basically, again, this necromantic control over death even bleeds over thematically into our weapon choice. Lathander's Light sheds a holy light in a 6-meter radius. In combat, fiends and undead standing in this light are blinded unless they succeed a con save. This is going to be able to illuminate our enemies, so basically triggering various features of the build. And also for free, for once per long rest, you get to cast a level 6 spell Sunbeam, which is the big, powerful radiant damage spell that we wouldn't really get any other way, so this is quite fun to have as a one-off thing. Quite cool. But yeah, that is the build. Not much else to say here. Like I say, if you wanted to go with more armor types or basically buff up your AC, you could swap out maybe your Dark Justiciar Gauntlets for the Gloves of Dexterity, or play around with ability scores. I mean, you can get this around the same time you get the Blood of Lathander pretty easily. Also, obviously, things like the Callous Glow Ring, like I said, can be replaced, so make sure you play around with the equipment here. But I feel like overall, achieving a build that does both radiant and necrotic damage in a effective way has absolutely been achieved here. You get to be both a martial fighter and a full caster, which is awesome, getting all the way up to those level 6 spell slots. You have a ton of options for battlefield control and high melee damage, as well as high range damage. With the use of guidance and other stuff, you can be really effective in dialogue. Basically, this is going to be a build that's effective throughout the whole game in various aspects of play. But yeah, I think that is going to do it for me. This has been quite a fun build to make, and as I said, with this point, I I am done with the backlog of build requests. So I'm going to be trying and dipping into some thematic builds, of builds that revolve around interesting mechanics or maybe subclasses that I haven't gotten to mess around with yet. But I am still taking build requests, just less specific characters and more character themes. The recent requests for Red Mage, actually, that was one of my favourite builds to make in the end. I know I kind of lamented about Swordsbard, but looking back on that build, it's probably one of the ones I'm most proud of. So things like that, where you can suggest something from maybe another game, but it's a bit more loose in terms. I kind of wanted to look at the other like kind of Final Fantasy classes throughout the ages and kind of make builds based on them, but I haven't really decided what to do yet. But again, so feel free to still request things, just I might not do all of them, whereas I have been trying to do as many as I can up to this point. But I'm also going to be continuing with the Halloween themed builds. One of those is going to be coming out every single weekend until the end of the month of October. My last build, the Slasher, seemed to be really, really well received, and I believe someone asked if I could do something kind of along the lines of Gothic horror, and I think I've got something in mind for that, so stay tuned. But that is going to do it for me, like I said. I hope you all enjoyed the build, and I will see you all next time.